All right, yesterday afternoon, Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel held a short, listen-only conference call with RNC leaders, somewhat apologizing for the way she rolled out an RNC Pride Coalition earlier this month. According to McDaniel, no one should be worried that hiring staff to advance the Pride Coalition will not affect the party's policies or party platform that gives direction to the Republican Party nationwide. And let me ask the question, are we supposed to believe that? Well, joining me now to talk about this and more, Chad Connelly, founder of Faith Wins, former GOP National Director of Faith Engagement, and the former chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. Chad, welcome to the program.
Hey, Tony, how you doing, sir? Great to see you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Just to give our listeners, viewers, kind of the background on this, earlier in the month, 1st of November, I think November the 6th, a surprise announcement by the chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, said that there would be a Pride Coalition. This was made up of the log cabin Republicans and others who, quite frankly, stand for policies that are inconsistent with the party platform. The result of this has been people across the country have called out to their members, their RNC state chairmen, their national committee men and women, and as a result, there was a conference call yesterday. Tell us more about what is taking place at the RNC.
Yeah, well, Tony, honored to be on here. Appreciate all you do. I'm actually in Florida on our American Restoration Tour. And so I missed all this at the beginning, but I've had pastors all over the country calling me and asking me what is going on. And listen, as Christians, you and I have our feelings about how detrimental this is, what a dangerous move it is. And let's face it, politically, just a couple of weeks ago in Virginia, a lot of the extremist LGBT ideas are exactly why the Democrats lost so big in the state of Virginia. And we can debate that all day long and talk about it, but it seemed like a pretty bad idea to then go enable that. But in a bigger sense, Tony, as you said, I'm a former state party chairman. I got to be the first ever national director of Faith Engagement and ran GOP Faith. The real thing that shocked me in this was the chair made this unilateral decision that's 180 degrees off of the party platform without consulting the 168 members of the Republican National Committee. That's astounding to me. We have this thing called a national convention every 4 years to discuss things like the platform. And in my book, the party platform is our promise to the grassroots. It's our word to the activists, the grassroots people, those Republicans in all the states who work so hard between the conventions on every election. And I think what the party chair did was break her word. She broke her word to the Republicans nationally and went against the party platform without consulting those members, the 168 members of the Republican National Committee. I think that's pretty unprecedented.
All right, you've laid out several things there, Chad. Let me unpack a few of those things for our listeners. You talked about Virginia and the policies there that voters rejected, which, let me be very specific so people know what we're talking about here. This was the gender confusion policies, the pronoun policies that we're going to be talking about actually in the next segment with one of the teachers from Loudoun County. That policy, the gender neutral bathrooms where we've actually had assaults take place, where biological boys wearing skirts raped girls in the bathroom. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about that oftentimes comes along as a part of the LGBT agenda. Now, I'm not saying all of those that she's reached out to or she's hired and put on staff at the RNC advocate for those policies, but Chad, can you really say that the door would not be open to this if those groups are a part of a special initiative at the RNC?
Tony, there's no doubt about it. That door has been opened by the chair lady's actions. You know, I've been all over the state of Virginia. I run a 501c3 now, as you mentioned. And so I don't tell people who to vote for, even though, you know, my background's pretty hard to hide. But I heard repeatedly that maybe the blessing in COVID, Tony, was that parents got to see what their kids were learning and what they weren't learning from their school, from their public schools. And they were astonished. And the number one thing I heard was those things you mentioned, the extremist LGBT activities, the push by some of the public schools, the school districts hiding those rapes, just horrible stuff. And so all over the state of Virginia, I did pastor meetings this past 8 or 9 or 10 months, just trying to motivate and activate the church. I think we had 312 churches that sent poll watchers, for example. And so we did dozens of meetings. And the number one thing I heard were those items that you mentioned that alarmed them greatly and made them come out and vote for the Republican candidates, not just statewide, but the state House members that were up for election as well, Tony. So it's just surprising right after that big win in Virginia, she comes out and does this, like I said, without even asking the members.
Maybe she'll hire Terry McAuliffe as well to work at the RNC. In the memo she sent out yesterday, in a follow-up, she said this initiative is part of a comprehensive outreach. We'll have strategic initiatives for evangelicals, Catholics, Jewish, Hispanic, veterans, youth, Black. I mean, you headed up the Faith Coalition, which has basically been shut down. This now is the only special coalition. Is this Pride Coalition?
I guess that now, there are people who are not pro Second Amendment that probably vote Republican. Maybe we should start a coalition for them. There are certainly some Planned Parenthood people who vote Republican. Maybe we should start a coalition for them. The original idea of GOP Faith was to run up the score in the evangelical circles. You and I both know that the number one way to tell how somebody votes Republican is regular church attendance. And so GOP Faith, the idea of having a coalition there was to be intentional about reaching out to the pro-life, evangelical, church-going voters that voted 81% for Donald Trump. It was a record. And not that we needed or took or anything else, got the credit, but there's no question in my mind, those people want to vote Republican if you reach out and talk to them. And setting up a coalition for everybody, it seems a little bit like a Democratic move to me, Tony, to cobble together all these special interest groups when you and I know that the number one coalition for
Chad,
Republican
we got to leave it there, out of time. We'll talk more.